The sky was clear that morning, but something strange was coming. People in every country looked up as a shadow covered the sun. A huge alien ship floated above the clouds, silent and dark like a mountain in the sky. It was not attacking. It was just there, waiting. Then every phone, every TV, every speaker began to speak at once in every human language. The voice was deep, cold, and carried a warning. Do not hunt the beast. It cannot be killed. Many galaxies have tried. None have returned. The voice paused as if letting the words sink into the human mind. People looked at each other, confused and afraid. This was not a threat. It was advice. But from who? And for what reason? It's far away. In a research station deep in the Arctic snow, a strange signal had been detected days before the ship appeared. The team there thought it was just space noise until the signal became a scream. That morning, the blizzard was heavy, but the sound of engines came through the white fog. A small alien craft landed outside the station, its hull torn open, smoke pouring out. The scientists ran to it, not sure if they should help or hide. Inside, they found one alien survivor, tall, thin, with skin like silver metal and eyes wide. With pure terror, his left arm was gone and the wound looked as if it had been ripped, not cut. He tried to speak but coughed dark blood. Finally, his voice shook as he whispered, "It wakes when it smells fear." His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Dead before they could ask what it was, in the main control room of the station. The satellite feed showed something moving beneath the ice. It was massive, too large to be any machine or animal known on Earth. The heat signatures were strange, pulsing like a heartbeat. As the scientists zoomed in, they realized it was moving faster than a fighter jet, carving tunnels under the frozen ground. The thing seemed to be heading straight toward the station. Nobody spoke for a long moment. The youngest scientist finally whispered, "What if this is the beast?" No one wanted to answer. Hours later, a military helicopter landed outside. Soldiers in white snow armor stepped out, their faces hidden behind black visors. There were not here to rescue. They carried heavy weapons and strange equipment covered in frost. The commander, a tall man with scars across his face, ordered the scientists to pack everything. "We are taking you to a secure facility," he said. "This is now a military operation." Scientists demanded to know more, but the commander only gave one answer. "It has been here before, long before humans." In the helicopter, the commander explained that this beast had destroyed entire fleets of advanced alien civilizations. The reason Earth had never seen it was because humans had never gone deep enough into the frozen places of the world to disturb it. But now, something maybe the research team's drilling had woken it. The alien ship in the sky was not here to conquer Earth. It was here to warn humans to stay away from the thing beneath the ice. By nightfall, they reached a hidden underground base. There, the scientists were shown classified recordings from other worlds. The videos were shaky, filled with screams, but one thing was clear: the beast was no normal creature. It was bigger than buildings, with a body that seemed to shift and change in the shadows. Energy weapons passed through it like smoke. Explosions barely slowed it down. The most disturbing thing was the way it moved fast, silent, and always. Watching, in every recording, just before it attacked, the people on screen froze in terror, as if the creature could force fear into their minds. Then it struck. The commander told them a special task force was being formed: scientists, soldiers, and hunters from Earth's called Project Final Hunt. They would track it, study it, and if possible, kill it. The scientists looked at each other in disbelief. The alien recordings had shown nothing could harm it. The alien ship had begged them not to try. And yet the commander's eyes were cold and steady. "It is coming for us whether we go after it or not," he said. "The only choice is to hunt it first." The storm grew worse. The satellite cameras still tracked the heat signature under the ice, and now it was rising closer to the surface. The tunnels it carved began to form a spiral around the very spot where the alien craft had crashed. At the center of that spiral lay the body of the dead alien survivor. The camera feed glitched and froze. then returned for just 1 second, long enough to show a shadow leaning over the body. Two glowing eyes stared directly into the camera before the screen went black. Somewhere, far below the ice, something ancient and powerful was awake. And it knew the humans were coming. The ice tunnel was silent except for the slow drip of melting frost. The human expedition moved carefully, their lights cutting thin beams through the darkness. The air was colder than outside, yet each step made their breath quicken, as if something unseen was watching them. Captain Rourke walked at the front, his rifle ready, his eyes scanning the shifting shadows. Behind him, Dr. Leanne traced her fingers along the smooth tunnel walls. It didn't look like something made by ice or by human machines. The walls were carved, marked with symbols that glowed faintly when touched. They were not random each. Symbol was sharp, deliberate, and alien. At first, the team thought the carvings were just warnings or old decorations, but then Corporal Hayes stopped dead in his tracks. His light froze on one of the carvings, and his hands began to shake. The others stepped closer, confused. The marks weren't just alien symbols, they were names. Names in clear human letters. And every name belonged to someone on their team. The list ended with one last space. A blank space. It's just wide enough for one more name. A shiver passed through the group. No one spoke until Hayes muttered, This means it knows we're here." His voice cracked as he turned toward the dark passage ahead. The tunnel suddenly felt smaller, heavier. The only sound was the low hum of the equipment they carried. Then, far ahead, a low, slow sound rose like the deep breathing of something massive. The sound made their chests tighten. Even the veterans in the group found themselves gripping their weapons harder, their mouths dry. They began moving faster, wanting to get the mission over with, but the further they went, the more the carvings on the wall changed. The symbols became jagged and violent, like claws tearing into the rock. In between the symbols were strange pictures and images of battles. Alien ships exploding, and giant shapes swallowing soldiers whole. Dr. Leon stopped at one carving that showed a towering creature standing over what looked like an entire city. The buildings burned around it, and strange shapes floated above, running away. "Fought wars," she whispered. "It's been killing for thousands of years." The breathing sound grew louder. Captain Rourke ordered them to switch to night vision, and the tunnel ahead glowed green in their visors. For a brief moment, something moved just at the edge of the light, something too big to fit in the tunnel, yet it seemed to slide through the walls as if the ice were water. They reached a vast chamber deep beneath the ice. In the center lay shattered pieces of alien armor, blackened and broken. It looked ancient. Around the remains were large marks burned into the ice shapes that matched no known weapon. One of the soldiers bent down and touched the armor. But the moment his glove made contact, the air temperature dropped so fast that frost grew over his visor. His breath fogged completely, and in that fog, he swore he saw two faint, glowing eyes staring right at him from the reflection. Suddenly, their comes burst alive with static, and through the noise came a whisper, not in alien speech, but in perfect English. "You have come far enough."
Ow.
The voice was deep, slow, and carried something more than sound. It carried weight. Every muscle in their bodies locked for a second, as if their minds were struggling against invisible chains. A sudden vibration shook the ground. Snow and ice rained down from the ceiling. Lights flickered. Somewhere behind them, something massive moved. They turned and caught a glimpse of shape taller than any man, sliding back into the shadows, faster than anything that size should move. The breathing was now all around them, echoing from every direction. The team tried to retreat, but the tunnels behind them were different. The way they came in was gone, replaced by new passages twisting in impossible angles. "It's playing with us," Hayes muttered, sweat freezing on his face. Then came the sound of footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. The team formed a tight circle, weapons ready, scanning every shadow. But the footsteps stopped. Silence. Somewhere in that silence, something laughed. Snow blew hard against the entrance of the ice tunnel, but inside, the air was deathly still. The team's breaths came quick and sharp, each puff of vapor hanging in the cold like a warning. Then a scream tore through the silence. It was Corporal Hayes. He was yanked backward so fast that his boots barely scraped the ice before he vanished into the dark. His rifle clattered to the ground, sliding toward Captain Rourke. For a moment, no one moved. The scream had not stopped, echoed down the tunnel, twisting into something that sounded less like fear and more like agony. They ran after him, their lights bouncing off the jagged ice walls. The scream grew weaker, then cut off entirely. The only sound left was their own footsteps. Then from the shadows ahead, Hayes stumbled into the light. His face was pale, his armor cracked, and frost clung to his hair. Rourke rushed to him but froze when he saw Hayes's eyes. They were pitch black, like two holes cut into his face. Hayes's voice was low and broken. "It showed me," he said. "It showed me how I die." His hand twitched, and something shifted under his skin, moving like a snake along his arm. The team backed away as his breathing turned ragged. His words came again, slow and heavy. "It's already inside me." Before anyone could react, Hayes dropped to his knees, clutching his head. His body convulsed, his mouth opened in a silent scream, and then he collapsed, motionless. Dr. Lien knelt beside him, checking for a pulse, but there was none. And yet his skin was still warm, far too warm for the freezing air. Something deep inside him pulsed once, then went still. They didn't have time to decide what to do with the body. A deep rumble passed through the ice under their feet, followed by a sound like claws dragging across glass. The soldiers raised their weapons. From the far end of the chamber, two enormous shadows shifted. The first shape slid out of the darkness. It was long, its form unclear, but its eyes burned like hot metal in the frost. The second shadow moved in the walls themselves, like the ice was alive. Rourke ordered everyone to open fire. The gunfire thundered in the chamber, muzzle flashes reflecting off the frozen walls. But the bullets slowed in the air, as if hitting invisible water, and then simply fell to the ground. Plasma bursts fizzled into nothing before they reached the creature. The beast didn't even flinch, only tilted its head, studying them like a predator deciding which to eat first. Suddenly, the air was filled with whispers not coming from their radios, but inside their own minds. Words they didn't recognize, mixed with flashes of memory that weren't their own. Dr. Liane gasped as she saw visions of alien worlds burning. Another soldier cried out, dropping his gun as images of his family screaming filled his head. Beast was showing them fear feeding on it. Rourke shouted for the team to fall back, dragging the shaken soldiers toward a narrow side tunnel. But as they moved, the beast surged forward. It was impossibly fast. One swipe of its claw tore through a steel crate like paper. Rourke fired again and again, not to kill it but to slow it down. Then, from behind, the tunnel ceiling cracked. A shower of ice fell, cutting the team off from the way they came. They were trapped. The beast stopped moving, its glowing eyes fixed on them. Slowly. It leaned its head down until it was almost touching the ice floor, its voice deep and cold. Slid into their minds. "Run. Make me hungry." The chamber filled with the sound of its claws against the ice as it began to follow them. The wind outside screamed across the Arctic plain. But inside the hidden military base, the air was tense and still. The surviving members of Project Final Hunt stood around a massive holographic table, its glowing blue image showing the tunnels beneath the ice. The beast's movements were unpredictable. One moment it seemed hundreds of meters away. The next it appeared just behind a patrol. It was playing with them. Captain Rourke's jaw was tight as he pointed at a narrow valley on the map. "This is where we'll take it," he said. The plan was simple on paper, but deadly in reality. It would lure the beast into a choke point. Ice valleys surrounded by steep cliff sand, bury it in a controlled collapse of explosives. The valley floor would be seeded with energy beacons emitting a frequency the creature seemed drawn to. The soldiers moved quickly, hauling heavy crates through the snow, setting the charges in precise positions. Every shadow looked like movement. Every gust of wind sounded like breathing. By the time the trap was ready, the temperature had dropped so low that frost formed inside their helmets. Dr. Lien adjusted the resonance frequency on the beacons. her gloved hands trembling not from the cold but from the weight of knowing what was coming. In the distance, a low rumble rolled across the ice, too deep to be thunder. The soldiers took their positions, their breath clouding the air. Somewhere far out in the white void, the beast was coming. At first there was nothing but silence. Then the snow began to swirl in strange patterns, spiraling toward the center of the valley as if drawn by an invisible force. The beacons pulsed brighter. A shadow appeared through the storm, massive and formless, sliding closer. Rourke gave the signal. The team crouched low, fingers on detonators, waiting for the perfect moment. The shadow grew sharper, and then everything stopped. The wind, the snow, even the faint hum of the beacons went silent. A few soldiers glanced at each other in confusion. And then came a sharp metallic click, followed by an ear-splitting blast. One of the explosives detonated early, blowing a crater in the ice. 2 soldiers were thrown into the air, their screams. Lost in the explosion? Through the smoke, a shape moved tall, black with eyes like molten fire. The beast stepped forward, unharmed, its gaze locking on the nearest drone camera. For the first time it spoke aloud, its voice low but carrying over the howling wind. "You cannot kill what you fear." The words were perfect English, each syllable slow and deliberate. Rourke yelled for the team to trigger the rest of the charges, but nothing happened. The detonators showed green lights, armed and ready, yet the system was dead. The beast tilted its head, and one by one, the explosives simply shut down. It wasn't just resisting their weapons, it was controlling them. The soldiers opened fire in desperation, sound of gunfire echoing off the cliffs. The beast didn't dodge. Bullets passed through its body like smoke, vanishing into the storm. In a blur of movement, it was suddenly among them, its claws slashing through armor like paper. A soldier vanished into the snow, dragged by something unseen. Rourke shouted for retreat. But the path out of the valley was blocked. Walls of ice had risen where there had been open space minutes before. The team realized too late they hadn't trapped the beast. The beast had trapped them in the chaos. Dr. Liane spotted something in the storm-massive structures half buried under the ice, their surfaces carved with the same alien symbols they had seen in the tunnels. "The fortress," she shouted over the gunfire. "It's here." Rourke grabbed her arm and pulled her back toward the cliffs, the beast's shadow closing in. They had failed. The trap was in pieces. But if the fortress could hold the creature, maybe, just maybe, it was their only chance left. The beast stopped its advance for a moment, watching them retreat toward the ancient alien walls. It didn't move to stop them. Instead, it let out a low, rumbling growl that shook the ground. A sound that felt less like rage and more like amusement. Somewhere, deep in that growl, was the unspoken message. "Run. Make me chase you." Snow whipped across the frozen wasteland, turning the world into a blur of white and shadow. The remains of the failed trap still smoked in the distance, black scars against the ice. Captain Rourke led what was left of the team toward the alien fortress Dr. Liane had spotted. The walls of the structure rose from the snow like the bones of some long-dead giant, carved with the same strange symbols they had seen in the tunnels. The wind seemed to die as they stepped inside. The storm muted by the sheer size of the place. The fortress was ancient, its halls wide enough for machines the size of buildings to pass through. Every wall was covered with grooves and strange metal panels that pulsed faintly with light even after what must have been thousands of years. In the center of the main chamber stood a massive archway, its inner edges lined with black crystal. Dr. Liane ran her gloved fingers across the crystal and felt a vibration, low and deep, like a heartbeat. This wasn't a prison," she said. "It's a weapon." They had no time to study it. The ground trembled. From the open doorway of the fortress came the shadow of the beast. Its glowing eyes cut through the dim light, and its massive form slid forward with terrifying ease. The soldiers took cover, setting up the sonic resonance device they had salvaged from the failed trap. Rourke barked orders as they planted the emitters in a half circle around the archway. The beast entered, its claws dragging along the floor, sending sparks off the strange metal. It seemed almost curious. tilting its head as it stepped between the emitters. Then Rourke gave the signal. The devices lit up, emitting a high-pitched pulse that made the air shimmer. The sound was unbearable, even through their helmets. The beast reacted instantly. Its head snapped back, and a roar tore through the fortress like an earthquake. The crystal-lined archway flared with bright light. The team watched in shock as black liquid splattered across the floor. The beast had been hurt, really hurt for the first time. Its blood hissed as it touched the metal, melting tiny holes into the surface. The soldiers opened fire, and this time the creature stumbled, the resonance keeping it from shifting fully into its strange shadow form. But the victory was short-lived. Deep beneath the fortress, the ice began to crack and shift. A breaking stone echoed upward, and the ground under their feet buckled. Dr. Liane turned to Rourke, her face pale. "It's not alone." From the fissures in the floor, shapes began to rise smaller than the beast, but still monstrous. They moved like wolves, their bodies twisted and black, eyes glowing with the same molten fire. There were 5, then 10, then more. The air filled with their growls, a sound that vibrated in the bones. The team backed toward the archway, trying to hold the line. Rourke ordered the resonance to maximum, and the smaller creatures flinched, but they didn't stop. They attacked in a blur of claws and teeth, forcing the soldiers into brutal close combat. Every shot, every swing of a blade felt like it barely slowed them down. Through the chaos, the beast itself recovered, its wounds sealing far too quickly. It stepped forward, its eyes burning brighter. The resonance made it stagger, but it was learning, adapting, its movements growing less affected with each second. Rourke knew they couldn't hold the fortress much longer. He shouted over the noise to plant the last of the explosives on the crystal archway. If the weapon couldn't contain the beast, maybe it could destroy it. The charges were set, the team retreating toward the outer walls. The creatures swarmed. Closer, the beast right behind them. As Rourke hit the detonator, the archway erupted in a blinding flash of light and sound. The shockwave ripped through the hall, throwing the smaller beasts back and knocking the great creature to one knee. The roar that followed was unlike anything they had heard before, pain and rage combined. The black blood poured freely now, melting holes in the floor as the beast thrashed. The humans ran, not waiting to see if it would rise again. But as they fled into the blizzard outside, Dr. Liane looked back just once and froze. In the storm. Behind them, the beast was already moving. Wounded, but still alive, and its army was following. The blizzard swallowed the team as they ran, the fortress vanishing behind them in the white storm. The sound of the smaller beasts echoed through the snow, claws scratching across the ice, growls carried on the wind. Somewhere behind them, deeper and heavier, came the slow, deliberate steps of the wounded beast. Even hurt, it was relentless. Captain Rourke pushed the team forward toward a narrow ridge, the only path to the extraction point. Above the wind, he spoke into his cum. "Prep the weapon. We use it here." The weapon was a last resort and unstable experimental device capable of shattering an entire section of the ice continent. The military scientists called it the cryocore detonator. To Rourke, it was just the end of everything in a 30-kilometer radius. The soldiers moved quickly, planting the device into the frozen ground. Dr. Liane worked the controls, her hands numb from the cold and fear. The timer was set for 5 minutes. They had to lure the beast right into its blast radius. The growls grew louder. Dark shapes appeared in the snow, darting between drifts. The smaller beasts came first, charging through the storm in a coordinated rush. Gunfire lit the night, echoing across the ridge. The humans fought hard, every bullet and blade aimed to buy just a few more seconds. One by one, the soldiers fell back toward the detonator. Then, the storm seemed to split in two, and the beast stepped through. Its body was torn in places from the resonance attack, black blood steaming in the freezing air. Yet its eyes burned brighter than ever, locked on Rourke, as if nothing else existed. It didn't charge. It simply walked forward, each step a slow challenge. Rourke knew it was too smart to walk into the trap without reason. He stepped away from the others, rifle in hand, and shouted over the wind. You want me? Come take me. The beast tilted its head, then quickened its pace. The smaller creatures held back, watching as their leader closed the distance. At 30 meters, Rourke opened fire, each shot aimed at its glowing eyes. The beast swiped the bullets aside with one massive claw and lunged. Rourke dove back toward the detonator, landing hard in the snow. The creature loomed over him, breath hot despite the freezing air, claws pressing into the ice on either side of his body. Its voice filled his head, low and almost curious. You are the first to make me bleed. The timer read 7 seconds. Dr. Leon screamed for Rourke to move, but he stayed, holding the beast's gaze. In those final seconds, he saw something. In its eyes, not just hunger, but recognition, as if it understood the humans were not prey anymore. The beast's claws tightened. The cryocore detonated. A blinding white light swallowed everything, the explosion so bright it burned through the snowstorm. The ground cracked open, swallowing the ridge, sending massive sheets of ice plunging into the sea below. The shockwave blasted outward, erasing the fortress, the tunnels, and the creatures in seconds. When the light faded, there was nothing but silence. Rescue teams arrived hours later, pulling survivors from the ice. Dr. Leon was among them. Frostbitten and shaken, but alive, Rourke was gone. No trace of the beast or its army remained, only a massive crater filled with swirling snow. Weeks later, alien fleets arrived in Earth's orbit. Their leaders demanded to see proof. When they saw the crater, they spoke in disbelief. No one has ever done this. Humanity had done what they swore was impossible. But in a hidden Earth laboratory, under bright white lights, a shard of the beast's black hide sat inside a reinforced container. Scientists studied it in awe. And, as the room grew cold, the shard twitched just once, like a muscle remembering it still had work to do.